Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
If you have questions about retirement, who better to ask than someone who's been there before? Today, we'll share some top advice from people who have been there and done that when it comes to retirement. Real retirement tips from real retirees. We are so glad you're here with us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. And this is such a great topic, Philip, talking about some of the top retirement tips from people who've already retired. Let me ask you as we get started here today, what are some of your top practical tips for people who are getting ready to retire? What do you like to tell people who are in that doorstep to retirement?
Well, I think there's several things that, one, congratulations that you're getting to that point in life, right? That you get to think about retirement. But a couple things. One is don't go into retirement with a bunch of debt. That just makes for such a stressful retirement. And then I tell people, look, have a plan. You need to have a plan, not just financially, but with your time. What are you going to do with your time? Because now, guess what? You don't have to go to a job every day. So what are you going to do with that time? And that's probably the biggest one. But I mean, is to have something you're going to be interested in to do, to plow back into the community, to pay it back is so much to speak, and that type of thing. But just to have some kind of plan.
Yeah. All right. Good thoughts there. Just make sure that we're putting a little thought into it, I guess, having some sort of plan. Well, here are some words of wisdom from real people who have already retired. I found an article that they had talked to several retirees. One of them said you might miss the challenge and comfort of having a place to go to every day. One retiree said after retiring at age 60 and then traveling with his wife for a number of years, by age 70, he was ready for a job of some sort. He says, I missed the routine and the camaraderie. So tell me, on those first couple, I wonder how often you hear those types of things, Philip, where maybe life in retirement just isn't quite what they thought it might be, and they might miss things.
Isn't all what it was cracked up to be, right? So the first one you said, that one kind of rang a bell with me because, I've got a gentleman that's kind of worked for me for a while, and he's in his, mid late 70s. And he's like, I just want a place to go every morning. That's the thing, that just to be somewhere, to have a purpose, I think mostly to get out of the house. Right.
Right.
So, but that's that one. And then, I have, talking about the second one, travel for a while now, ready to get back to work. And I have talking to a client last week. Just getting ready to retire in December. And we had that conversation, what are you going to do with your time? Do you really want to go cold turkey? And so we just kind of walked through that, does it make sense? Can you kind of keep doing a little something and still get out and travel and do the things you want to do? Those are the type of things that you got to kind of think through. And sometimes you get going for a while and you think, well, no, I really want something to do, with my hands, or especially people that's what they've done all their life.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to make that transition.
Huge transition, I would say. And, there was another retiree, when you read through this article, this retiree says, be prepared to be flexible even with long-held dreams. And I think this retiree, she and her husband had some plans for what they wanted to do once they retired. But then when it came down to it, he wasn't fully able to walk away from his job, his business that he owned. And so it kind of changed some of their plans for travel and relocation, all that kind of thing. And they had to find a new compromise. So this is really important for couples when somebody has a change of heart about their travel plans or their retirement timeline or their ability to walk away from their career. We got to be prepared to be flexible in retirement.
We do have to be flexible, and probably more ways than one, right? Because things change. Our health can be an issue and cause us to have to make some changes in our plans and what we had really anticipated to do in retirement. But we just need to be flexible. Don't be stressed out about the whole thing, because that just makes it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to making big changes in retirement, some people think it's a good idea to get a second opinion. You think about that, or maybe even take a trial run before you make a big investment in a new retirement home or an RV. Think twice before moving, says one retiree. If you think you want to live somewhere else, rent first. So how do you talk to people about taking a test drive on their retirement before they actually leave their career behind for good, or they make that move, or they buy that RV? How do you counsel people on that?
It's one of those things you got to walk this little fine line, right? Because they've got this vision of what they think retirement is going to be. But we try to bring them back to earth a little bit and just say, hey, look, before you do that drastic step, rent an RV, go take a long trip, make sure that it's really and truly what you want to do. Because I've had friends, they buy the RV and they keep it for about a year and they go gangbusters. They take that one big trip around the country and then it sits there. And so they finally, sell it. And typically, RVs are kind of like cars. You take a beating that first year. And so the other thing I encourage people, if it's an RV, don't buy a brand new one, right? Find one that's got the kinks out of first. That maybe you can save that depreciation for sure. And then the other thing is moving, right? If I'm going to relocate, I think a lot of people that do the 6 months down here in Florida and 6 months back up north, they kind of got a feel for what it's like to be down here. And they just live that way. Now, some people will ultimately migrate down here and be full-time residents down here in Florida because they're tired of going back and forth, or there's no family up there, so they might as well get them down here. But try it first. Go rent it for an extended period of time, not just a month. If you're going to try to relocate, go spend 6 months there and see what it's really like before you, and all seasons, right? Especially if you're going north. Check out the winter and the summer, not just not just when you want to go.
Yeah, that's good advice there. I actually, not somebody who was retiring, but a friend of mine from high school, they used to spend a couple weeks every summer up in Minnesota fishing and absolutely loved it and just always wanted to live there. He went up there for one winter and then he just moved right back. So you're right. Check out all the seasons.
Exactly. And that's the whole idea of our core retirement design is, we help you with the financial part, but we want to help you design your whole retirement and help you make sure that you're making all the right choices and putting together the proper planning to have that retirement you always dreamed of. Give us a call. It's an easy process to start. Give us a call at 863-285-3815 to walk through our core retirement design, where we'll work hard to help you design that retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is the president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. Today we're sharing words of wisdom from people who have already retired. And here are a few more. Things like illness, divorce, and death all contribute to the loneliness older adults can feel. So be prepared to navigate changing relationships over time and changing family situations. Think about a little bit more negative here, but chronic illness, that kind of thing can become more common. So travel while you can. One retiree says, even before you retire, because, quote, your health doesn't last forever. And then another thing, your favorite pastimes might change once you're able to do them all day, every day. They might be a little less appealing. So be prepared to find new interests and hobbies. How do you talk to people about creating that spending plan that allows them, Philip, to fulfill their personal goals and keep their hobbies and those types of things once they retire? Nobody wants to sit around just studying bank accounts and spreadsheets in retirement.
No, they don't. At least not most people, right?
Right.
And so I look at that and think, that's right. We need to have that plan together, and we don't want to call it budgeting because that's a negative word in our world today. So, but a spending plan is a good idea. What am I going to spend? And it does become difficult to put that together, but we help people walk through that process of what do they want to accomplish in retirement? Are we going to spend 10 years traveling? And typically it sounds good up front, but after you do it for a year or two, most of the folks I sit down and talk with during review time is like, what, we're just tired of going all the time. We're going to probably spend more time at home going forward and take maybe 1 or 2 trips a year. And so you see that because it does become a hassle traveling. But I like what one guy said, right? Is that you need to travel while you can.
Yep.
Because your health doesn't last forever. Now, my friends make fun of me all the time because I try to get trips in when I can. But I've taken that to heart, right? That look, we don't know, how much longer we have on this earth. And so you need to take advantage of every day and don't wait for retirement to do the things you really enjoy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What do people often overlook when they're trying to get ready for retirement, Philip?
I think the one thing that I see them really overlook, and I mentioned it earlier, and that's what are you going to do with your time?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not the first year because you've got it mapped out, right? The first year is like, I'm going to retire, I'm going to buy the boat or I'm going to buy the RV and we're going to travel. And this is what we're going to do the first year. But what are you going to do the second year and the third year and the fourth year and so on, right? So then to me, that's where it really changes. And I think that's where people really start to have a difficult time when it comes to their retirement.
Right.
Is those times. And so having that plan in place of, plugging back into the community, finding a something that you can support with your time and energy and still go do the fun stuff and travel, but have a purpose.
Yeah, those are good thoughts there. And you know what? As we have this conversation, it's good to learn from our mistakes, obviously, but you could say it's even better to learn from the mistakes others have made, especially when it comes to something as big as retirement. And an important step here is creating that written retirement income plan to help you avoid some of those financial missteps in the future.
Absolutely. If you think about it, Jen, nearly 70% of the folks out there in America are missing that written retirement income plan. And people without a plan tend to feel less confident about their future. And so that written financial plan can help you feel more financially stable. So you don't have to be one of those people that are worried about your money lasting as long as you're around and to make sure that you can do the things you want to do and that you can, really retire and be comfortable in retirement. We have the process to help you create that income strategy. And we start with what we call our core retirement analysis, where we help you analyze where you are to figure out where you need to get to and putting together that whole plan. So we look at the risk in your portfolio. We look at the tax implications going forward and how can we better equip you for taxes down the road. And then lastly, putting together that all-elusive written retirement income plan. Folks, to get started with your core retirement analysis, give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. This
is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
In times of volatility, the only wrong move is not making one. Call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services today and find out where you currently stand with your portfolio. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. And, when you think about what retirement looks like today, retirements last so much longer these days. Retirement can last 2 or 3 decades. So it helps to break it down into stages when you're planning. It's a little less overwhelming, Philip, to plan for these smaller stages versus a 30-year retirement. So it's really important to plan ahead because no matter how you want to describe these things, your income needs to last throughout your entire retirement. So these stages, Philip, are kind of fun. We've talked about this before here on the show. The first one that we're going to talk about today is the go-go years, then the slow-go years, then the no-go years. It kind of unfolds in stages. Is that how you approach this when you're talking to clients?
We do look at it that way because, I mean, if you don't plan that way, then it really kind of falls apart because you know that the younger you are, the more you want to go while you can. And so that's really kind of a philosophy we use. And I learned that a long time ago from some clients of mine.
Absolutely. So how important is it when you're thinking about those early years, the energetic go years, how important is it for you to know how you're going to spend that time before you actually retire?
I'm going to say it is important, right? Because when it comes to retirement, Jim, there's 2 factors, right? There's the money factor and there's a time factor.
Sure.
The money, it can be easily budgeted, right? We can budget the money. We can figure out where we are. We can front load, what I call front load the go years, right? So that we take a little bit more income those first, 10 years while we're in that go period. We want to travel. We want to cruise. We want to see everything. And so that's a big deal. But the other part of that is the time budget. What are we going to do when we retire? I mean, nobody wants to sit there and twiddle their thumbs. You can only play so many rounds of golf. You can only go fishing so many hours a day. You can only go shopping so much. And so what are you going to do with yourself during that period of time? And that probably becomes a bigger challenge than the financial budget.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
And so, I encourage people, let's start finding now, where are you going to volunteer? What are you going to do to be active in retirement? Pickleball is a big deal down here now. So,
right.
Maybe you learn a new sport that you and your wife can do together, or you and your husband can do together. And so I think that's a big deal, is really a time aspect. What are you going to do with your time?
It's such a big transition. You go from working every day to now you can do whatever you want, but you have to be mindful of what those things cost. And I guess that's the other piece of it too. If you want to maintain your current lifestyle, your current standard of living, and you want to do a few extra things, well, we've got to have a handle on that. And then we don't want to forget about things like what's going on with inflation, how that can cause this standard of living, Philip. If you're not retiring for a few more years, your day-to-day life is just going to cost a little bit more. So we have to kind of get ahead of that. How do you talk to people about strategies to help us get ahead of things like inflation when we're in those planning years?
When we talk about that whole process, right, is one, you have to have a realistic budget, right? Because if you don't have a budget, you don't have a plan to really even focus on. So we need that budget in place so that we know what the targets are from that standpoint. And then we need to look at down the road, what are we going to be doing in retirement? And I think that we really have to kind of focus on that plan. What's that plan look like for you? What are you going to do in retirement? And then what's it going to cost you, right? And so in our planning, we automatically build in for inflation. Now, granted, inflation lately has been a lot higher than anybody has anticipated.
Sure.
But there's been a lot of years that it was way less than we planned for. So the idea is hopefully over 5 and 10 year cycles that we average out to the right place where we need to be. And so, but you have to plan for that when you put together that income plan.
Right. But, even when you talk about what's going on with inflation, even when it was at a quote unquote normal rate, you still have to account for the cost of everything doubling every 24, 25 years, something like that. I mean, prices are still going to continue to go up, even when we don't see this rampant inflation like what we've seen over the past few years.
That's right. And thankfully, things like Social Security have some cost of living built into them. If you have a government pension, maybe you have some cost of living built in. If you have just an old-fashioned pension from a company, you typically don't see a cost of living built into those type of things. So you've got to make up for it some way, somehow. And really, again, that comes down to our core retirement design, where we help you design that retirement you always dreamed of, because we take into account those three pillars. We took into risk, taxes, and income. And in that income plan, we are looking at inflation, making sure that we're building in steps to your income to make sure that it's going to last as long as you do. Look, if you are getting ready to retire 3 to 5 years out from retirement, or you've been retired for 5 or 10 years, I can't tell you how important it is to have that income plan in place, because those can be years that can be traumatic if you mess something up. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. And let's schedule your core retirement analysis.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is the president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, talking today about the different stages of retirement. Retirements, the whole idea here, retirements last so much longer today than they used to, that we break it down into phases. We don't look at this anymore like the finish line like we used to. We break it down into these different phases because this is a brand new phase of life, and we just want to change our mindset here. Philip, let's talk a little bit about the second phase or second stage of retirement, which is what we call the slow go years. So this is a little bit into your retirement. You've already maybe done a lot of the traveling and done a lot of the trips, but you still want to go see the grandkids, do some things, maybe just some more localized travel or maybe on a smaller scale. And of course, the income still needs to be there. So how do we prepare for this phase where we're maybe 10, 15 years into our retirement?
So, Jen, when we get to those, slower go years, well, we still, maybe we don't need quite as much income as we had before. And so we build that into our plan. And a lot of times we'll have that discussion with our client. How long do you think you're going to want to go, right? And I'll talk to them from my experience and my clients, what it looks like and has been in the past. And we'll build that into the system, right? We'll build that into the planning process of what that looks like for them. And maybe we don't need as much income at that point. Instead of going 4 times a year to visit the grandkids, we only go 2. Instead of going sailing on cruises 4 or 5 times a year, we drop down to 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And so we realize that that's going to happen, right? Health issues start to develop. We've done some of the things we want to do. And so now we're just slowing down, and that happens, right? And so for some people it's sooner. Mm-hmm. For some people it's later, but we build those things into the plan. And they can be flexible, right? If maybe not 10 years, you're not ready to slow down yet. Maybe it's 15 years. But we have that give and take within our planning process.
I really like that point that it doesn't mean that you have to totally stop doing all the things. You just might not really feel like doing that same scale of travel and that type of thing. But you can certainly still go out there, be active. And I think, Philip, is this probably the stage where some of those real conversations really need to happen as it relates to what's going on with our healthcare costs and some of those types of things? How do we start planning for some of those healthcare expenses that will be running into maybe a little bit more as we progress through retirement?
If inflation is affecting the things you and I are buying at the grocery store and other places, that it'll be even bigger when it comes to healthcare costs. And so we need to take that into consideration, that our deductibles are probably going to go up on Medicare, and we're going to need to plan for that as our health starts to diminish. And so there are several things we need to remember when we start thinking about healthcare costs. I mean, they throw out these big numbers, right?
Yes.
Fidelity always does this big plan, this big study. And
yeah, it's kind of a big, scary number. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now they've got it up to like $315,000 during retirement. Well, if you're retired for 30 years, that takes into consideration your Medicare premiums, your healthcare costs, your supplement costs. So, it's a big number and it's scary, but it's not an annualized number. You look at an annualized number, it's not quite as chunky to have to deal with. But what that number does not include, Jen, is long-term care.
Oof. All right.
And so at that point, we need to start thinking about, if we've not already thought about it, I like to think about it way before this, but what is our long-term care plan? And maybe we're going to self-fund it. Maybe we've looked at a long-term care policy way back when, and that's going to take care of us. Or maybe there's other options. Maybe we bought one of those life insurance policies that have a long-term care rider built into them, or an annuity that will help for long-term care costs. There's a lot of different things, but by now we need to have some plan in place of what that's going to look like, Jen. And I think that's something that people forget about.
Talk a little bit about how all of that fits in when you have those conversations with people about that core retirement design. This whole idea of thinking about the healthcare, long-term care, that's part of that overall comprehensive planning process, right?
We look at those things in stages, right? As we're building that income plan, we pose those questions. What are you thinking about long-term care? What is your plan, right? When we get to that point, nobody wants to deal with it. Nobody wants to think it'll happen to them. And there's different aspects when it comes to long-term care planning. In their head, everybody thinks of nursing home. I'm going to tell you, in history, when I look at my client base, there's not a lot of people that actually end up in, quote unquote, the nursing home.
Okay.
Now, do they end up in some assisted living facility? Absolutely. And so how do we fund that? Because that's a whole different concept than a nursing home. Okay. And so it's just a conversation we got to have. And we build it into the income plan. We have a plan in place of what we're going to do when that happens. If you don't have an income plan, a written retirement income plan that you can put your hands on, look at it, and review it periodically, then you don't have a plan for your retirement. Give us a call. Let us help you plan your retirement with our core retirement design. The number to call is 863-285-3815. And folks, it's easy. It starts with a 30-minute phone call. You don't even have to leave your house, right? Just give us a call. We'll talk about where you are, where you need to be. We'll answer questions that you have in the planning process. Give us a call. It's that simple, folks. 863-285-3815. One more time. It's 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Retirement might be the finish line for one phase of life, but it's the starting point of another, and you'll want to make sure you leave enough in the tank to make it all the way through to the end. So stay with us as we talk about those final stages of your retirement. We'll be back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
You can't see it, but you sure can feel it. The economy is struggling right now. Do you know how it might affect your retirement? Some retirement plans take into account economic downturns, stock market dips, interest rate fluctuations. Does yours? Take charge of your retirement by calling Philip Statler at 863-285-3815. Philip and his team at Statler Financial have been helping families prepare for retirement for over 20 years. They will help address the current economic situation and help you create a retirement plan designed to give you the confidence to move forward. Opportunities can exist regardless of economic conditions. Call the team, Philip Statler with Statler Financial at 863-285-3815 and find out ways you can prepare now for your retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Call them now. Schedule a visit. Let's get started. Firm offers insurance services. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, and I am Jen Rezac alongside, and we're talking today about the different stages of your retirement, just recognizing the fact that retirements today can last so long, several decades, that it helps to break it down into stages when you're planning. And for the later phases of your retirement, it's really important to be planning ahead here, Philip, because I don't think anybody says, oh, I want to spend all my money in my early years of retirement and have nothing to pay for healthcare at the end. But also nobody wants to say, oh, I don't want to travel or do anything fun because I'm worried about money later. I mean, there's kind of a balance we have to figure out here, right?
There is, though. You see some people like that, right? That no,
sure, they're afraid to do it. Yeah,
I need to make sure it's going to be here for later, right? And that's really all part of the planning process, right? And I guess, Jen, when we think about it, if we don't have a plan, then it can be scary.
Yeah.
If we have a plan in place that shows us where the money is coming from, when it's going to come there, that kind of helps give you some certainty in those years. Yeah. And so think about people that are in those no-go years. And it reminds me of a story that a client and I had this discussion way back when. I'm talking about way back. I'm talking about like probably 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I had this client and they were in their mid 80s, right? Mm-hmm. They were very well off. A nice portfolio, plenty of money coming in. And I would sit down with them and say, why don't you take a trip? Why don't you and your wife go do some stuff? And he looked at me and he said, Philip, at our age, do you know what it takes for us to travel? I've got all these medications I got to pack up.
Yeah.
And I got to pack up and I got to go. And then it messes up my whole schedule, right? I'm used to this rigid schedule, these things I do on certain times. It's too much. It takes so much to go. I'm so wore out when I get there that I can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'd rather just spend time in my woodworking shed and do that. And that was an eye opener for me. He said, I've taken the trips. We've done the things that we want to do. Now it's easier just to stay home. And back then, you think 30 years ago, I was a lot younger, Jen. And I thought, well, I'll never be like that.
What's this guy's deal?
What's the problem here? But you know what? The older I get, sometimes I'm like, I'm tired of going.
Yeah.
I just want to sit at home. And I'm not near my mid 80s
no,
yet.
You're
so
not.
It's like, okay, I got a ways to go. But it does give me some perspective of what folks feel like when they hit that stage of their health. They've done what they want to do.
That makes perfect sense. And sometimes we have, especially if you have a job that requires some travel, you get kind of over some of that in your earlier years. And so the whole idea here with thinking about these no-go years, Philip, is really what kind of planning do we need to do so you can have the quality of life and the lifestyle that you envisioned? I think maybe that's a good way to put this. And of course, the big unknown here, Philip, is how long we'll actually live in retirement. How long will these no-go years last? Of course, you're not going to have the big travel expenses, but you're going to have some different healthcare costs. You might have some different medications, those types of things. How do we plan for this final period of our life when we just don't know if we'll live to our 90s, if we'll live into our 100s? I mean, we don't know how long we'll be here.
That's a good point, Jen. We don't know how long we'll be here. We're not promised tomorrow. The flip side of that is that we don't know our health going forward, right? We don't know when our no-go years are going to start. And how long are we going to be in them, right? So that makes it a little bit intimidating when we start planning that process. Nobody wants to admit that it's going to happen. So we have to build that into the plan thinking, okay, maybe my no-go years will start when I'm 85 or 80. Because we kind of look in 10-year blocks, right? If somebody retires at 65, then they're going to go hard till 75 and then slow down. 85, they'll be slowing down even more.
Right.
Well, realistically, you're going to start slowing down maybe year by year, right? And so I think the whole idea is you got to have a plan in place. And I know I say that and I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but truly, if we don't have that income plan, there's so much of our life in retirement is going to depend upon that income plan. And if one spouse passes away, what's going to happen? The surviving spouse and making sure the plan is going to work for that person as well. There's a lot of variances there that we have to account for. And if you don't have a plan in place, I got to think uncertainty rings high. And so again, that's why I developed the core retirement design, specifically to help offset that uncertainty when it comes to retirement. It's simple, it's easy. It's a 30-minute phone conversation to start that process, folks. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Let's just start the conversation.
That number again, 863-285-3815. Talking today with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services, talking today about these different stages of retirement. Retirements today can last decades in some instances. Really, this doesn't look like what it used to, Philip, where perhaps you retired with the gold watch with this company that you'd worked at for decades, and then you had a short time of just relaxation and then you passed away. That's really not what retirement today looks like. It's a very different, very dynamic time of our life. How is some of this end of life planning starting to change for you? You know, people have children later in life. Maybe they paid for a lot of college up front. Is that starting to change some of the legacy goals that you see with clients and how we have those types of conversations for what to do with what's left after we pass away? What's going on there?
It depends. I'd say there's a couple different areas that retirees look at, right? Mm-hmm. So I have some clients that their whole focus, unfortunately, is to leave as much as they can to the next generation.
Sure.
I don't like it when I see it, because they're not enjoying their retirement, right?
Right.
And I push them. Look, I understand you want to leave as much as you can to your kids, but let's enjoy retirement. Let's don't focus on them. Let's focus on you. So that's one group. Then you have the other group, which I think this is probably more often than not, is the folks that, hey, look, I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going to enjoy my retirement. And if I have anything left, the kids can have it. And I'll make it as easy as I can for them to get what's left. I'll make it as tax friendly as I can for them to have what's left, but I'm not going to do without. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other little group, and I'll be honest, Jen, it's a much smaller little group that says, look, I'm going to plan for what I'm giving my kids. I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy the life insurance policy. I'm going to have this account specifically for them. They have it outlined in their mind exactly what they want to do, mm-hmm. and they've put that plan in place.
Okay.
It's a much smaller group of folks. I mean, it's interesting to work with those people because they have some big plans. They kind of know how they want to get there, but they don't have it down to the nth degree. Do I do this kind of trust? Can I do that kind of trust? Do I just outright leave this to them? And so we'll do that some, like, okay, let's don't leave them the IRA. Let's get a life insurance policy instead because it's tax free. Mm-hmm. Let's give the annuity, or let's give the IRA to the charity that you want to help, and give the life insurance to the kids because it's tax free. So trying to be as tax efficient as we can with all of that inheritance, I call it inheritance planning, down the road. Mm-hmm. It's fun for me when I get somebody that is their focus. You know, they want to do that, and putting a map out on how we're going to do that is one of the fun parts of my job.
Yeah, I'm sure. So let's talk a little bit about, Philip, when it comes to the comprehensive nature of the plans that you can help people with. You call yours the core retirement design. Let's talk about some of the first steps here for folks who they've done the saving. They're good with that part. Now they're just trying to figure out, what decisions do we make Where do we go from here? Talk a little bit about that core retirement design process that helps us map out some of those other decisions that we need to make with what we've saved.
Absolutely. Obviously, it depends on what stage they're in, right? If they're still working and they're getting ready to retire and they've got money in that 401k, we look at our first step. We call that 30-minute core retirement analysis, where we're going to have that 30-minute conversation, analyze kind of where they are. Do they need our help? Can we help them? All those type of things. The people that are already retired, same thing. We still walk through that 30-minute phone conversation. Where it gets a little different is, now where are we? If we're just getting ready to retire, how much do we have? Is it going to get us to where we need to be? And how much risk am I taking right now? Am I taking on too much risk? Do we even know how much risk you should have versus how much you do have? That is kind of the cornerstone of this whole core retirement design. Second, what can you do to be as tax efficient as possible? Are you blowing tax brackets that you could be doing some conversions and putting some money into Roths instead of traditions? Are you wasting that 10% tax bracket or that 12% tax bracket? It blows your mind how many people are paying zero taxes and proud of it when they're sitting there with a $500,000 IRA that they could have been taking some out and paying 0% tax on. That juices me up when I see that I've got that opportunity for folks that they really could be putting themselves in a tax-free situation. And the last step of that core retirement is putting together that income plan. What does that look like for you? That's all part of our core retirement design in order to help you build the retirement you've always dreamed of. I'd love to have that 30-minute conversation with you. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. We'll be back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. And Philip, when you think about all the decisions that we have to make as we are getting into retirement, there are so many choices. It can be such a dilemma trying to make a final decision with what you'll do and where you'll go. And then there are all these financial questions also. It's kind of like the longest game of Would You Rather. We're going to do a silly one to start, and then we're going to get into some money questions here. So the silly one is, would you rather watch a movie with no popcorn, no snacks, no drinks, or watch a movie, you get all the snacks you want, but the volume is always just a little too quiet or a little too loud, everything's a little too off? What's important to you?
What if I don't like either one of them? I want both. Come on, man.
That's the whole point of the Would You Rather. Like, we never actually want either one of them.
At this stage in my life, I would rather see the good movie that I could hear.
Yes.
I could go an hour and a half with, no popcorn, no snacks.
You could deal with it? Yeah.
Yeah, I could deal with it.
All right. Now that the silly one's out of the way, let's go to a money question. Would you rather have a single penny, 1 penny, that doubles every day for a month, or would you rather have $1 million up front?
Obviously, $1 million up front sounds better.
It does.
But I think if you do the math, if I get the single penny that doubles every day for a month, I think I'll come out ahead.
Walk us through the math. You take a single penny and you double it every day. What do we have by the end of the month?
So it comes out, Jen, to be $5,368,709 and some change.
Wow. $5.3 million. Okay.
Yeah.
From 1 penny.
1 penny.
Talk about that, the power of doubling here and compound interest. I mean, what a huge lesson for us to understand when we're thinking about how much difference it makes to get started sooner rather than later, right?
Exactly. And, when you first start out, it doesn't look like much, right?
No, it doesn't feel like much.
I used to always try to get folks, hey, look, let's, back in my early days, hey, put $25 in this IRA. Put $25 a month in. Set it and forget it. And before you know it, you got 10 grand. Think about it. What did you have before on day 29, right? On day 29, you had approximately $2.7 million.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah.
And then on the 30th day, now I got almost $5.4 million. So when you get towards that retirement, right? If we keep doing the same thing and we don't borrow against ourselves, take money out, that's how folks end up with that big 401k, right? Because they didn't touch it. That's how folks get so much money in retirement as they start with that little bit. So folks, young folks out there, start as soon as you can, putting a little bit away every month and increase it every time you get a raise.
Yep.
Ultimately, you'll end up with a nice retirement nest egg.
And there's another really good lesson here when you talk about this whole idea of sticking it out. If you ask the same question, but you only doubled the penny for 27 days, you go home with $671,000.
Those last 3 days were some big dollar days, weren't they?
And what if it was May or December and there's 31 days? Now we got 10 million.
That's the thing. Investors lose patience. And that's why I get paid. I get paid to keep people involved, doing what they need to be doing, keep them focused so they don't lose the patience they need to have to get to retirement.
Before we can start figuring out where exactly it is that we want to go, we have to figure out where we are right now. Then we start mapping out the path to get there. Certainly, the same thing is true on an actual map, and it's true with our finances. Talk about your process, that initial analysis, that initial conversation to help us figure out where we are so we can start figuring out just where we want to go.
The core retirement design that we built and put together that's really the first step. And the biggest part of what we do is we analyze folks' portfolio to see how much risk is in there. Because you know what? That's the one thing that you actually can control in your retirement portfolio is how much risk is there. So we want to analyze what that risk is, and we want to determine what your risk should be. And then we see those two and compare and contrast to see what action we need to take. Maybe you need more risk in your portfolio. Maybe you need less risk in your portfolio. Only about 10% of the folks out there actually have the right amount of risk they need. But you need to know what that is. And then you need to know what it's costing you to run that money, to have that portfolio. What are you paying in fees and expenses? Sometimes it'll surprise you what it's costing you. That's what our core retirement design really starts out to do for you. Give us a call at 863-285-3815 to have that 30-minute phone discussion about your current plan. 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. We are playing Retirement Would You Rather. And this is totally your personal preference here. Would you rather get a suitcase that has $10,000, or would you rather open a suitcase and there's a 50-50 chance that it's either $1,000 or $50,000? And I'm going to just add in one more thing. We don't have to pay taxes on it.
I would take the 50-50 chance.
Would you?
I would.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because sometimes people are maybe taking chances with their money more so than what they think, or maybe they don't even fully understand what's going on with where they're putting their money. They don't know what's in any of those suitcases, right?
That's right. Those type of questions are the questions that we walk through in our risk analysis to determine how people think, what they think, when it's not somebody else's suitcase, but it's their own money. Right? If it's your own money, would you rather make 5% or would you rather take a chance that you could make 10, but you could lose 5? So that's all part of the thinking and the process we go through to ascertain what somebody's risk number should be. So I think that's kind of interesting that question came up, because I think that it really does have people thinking about, if somebody gave you money, are you willing to take a risk? A lot of people would, right? If it's not your money to begin with, you'll take more risk than if it's really your money.
How do you help people navigate some of their big financial decisions, both before and during retirement, so they aren't leaving some of these things to chance? How do you help people navigate some of the different decisions for what they're going to be doing with their money and how to allocate what they have?
Well, we look at it, it kind of starts with, like you said, that risk analysis, right? On where they are, what they need, where they should be based on their age and income and that type of thing. But the other part is in their head, what are they thinking? What do they want to do in retirement? In those go-go years, how much do we need? In those slow-go years, what are we going to need? It kind of focuses on those type of things. What do we want to do? And if we're not quite to retirement yet, then we want to look at what do we need to make sure that we don't get hit with a brick, that year before we're going to retire. We don't want another 2008 to come along right before we're going to retire and mess up our plan. We want to have a plan in place that we know no matter what happens, that we're okay. We can get through whatever it is, and we can still retire on the same timetable that we already set in place. I think that's probably a bigger deal than what people realize at this point in time, because we forget about that, right? And so we need, if we're 3 or 4 years out, 5 years out from retirement, it's probably more important that you have a plan. You need to have a plan in place to make sure that if we have another 08 or another 2000, that you can still retire on the same timetable you set out for yourself. And I think that's a big key, Jen, is having all those things in place. And we're here to coach people through that process. We want to make sure that they're not making the mistake. We want them to call us. Look, here's what I'm thinking. Okay, what's the pros and cons? And help them through that process. Be that voice that they can talk to and know that they're going to get independent advice on what they should do. And ultimately, it's their choice, right? All you can do is lay out the good points and the bad points and the pros, the cons, and the decision's ultimately theirs. But you're the coach to help coach them through that. That's what we do at Statler Financial. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Give us a call today. Let's get the process started.
You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Be sure to tune in again next time for more insights from Philip, and we'll talk to you then. Have a great week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of